Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and the name of this program is Let's Live, and it's coming to you from Woodstock, New York, and from YouTube. And this evening, we are very, very excited about two things. One is we've got two books here, so we've got two writers, and we're going to talk about our books. But one of them is a writer who has written a children's book called One of 13. Catherine, can you tell people about your book? Let's start off. Tell us, introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay. Hello out there. My name, as Thurman said, is Catherine Zampier, and I come from the East Greenwich, New York area, which is a suburb of Albany, New York. And I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's kind of a fun thing to go on and speak about something I love dearly. I wrote my first children's picture book, which was published last fall. It was entirely a COVID project because I was home fine-tuning it over FaceTime with my publisher and the Illustrator, so it was very... I call it a COVID project because it was very focused during that time, and it worked out good. It's called One of 13, and as Thurman said, it is a children's picture book, but as I feel, all children's books, especially when they're a little older content, are for all ages. So I always don't even want to say children's, I say picture book a lot of times. But it's called One of 13, and it's based on a story my mother used to talk about when she was a child. She was one of 13 children. And of course, back in the 40s, it was much more common to have large families than it is now. So one of my reasons for writing is just the pure fun of it and having that relation with my mother, is to show families today, and mostly children, how people kind of lived when they had large families, what it was like to have a large family. Of course, it doesn't go into a lot of the aspects, but it shows a little bit. And just kind of the thinking that, wow, this is a phenomenon they don't think about anymore. I mean, this is a classroom, 13 kids now. So that's what the story is about. It's based on my mother disobeying her mother, doing something behind your back, going to the railroad tracks, and I can read it if you'd like at some point. She goes to the dangerous railroad tracks with her little sister, because when you're in a big family, you always watched out for your siblings. So they walked to the railroad tracks. They lived in the city, and she wanted a special penny that her handsome soldier brother in uniform gave her. She wanted that lucky penny she felt flattened on the railroad track. And this was kind of a common thing back then, and maybe still is today, I don't know. People aren't supposed to be playing near train tracks. But as her mother said, it's very dangerous near the train tracks, which is very true. No doubt about it. Even today it is. She put the penny on the railroad, the iron railing, quickly. And they heard the train coming, got out of the way. Hopefully her penny would be nice and flat and shiny. That was her goal. Next thing you know, the train goes by, thunderous train goes by, and she can't believe how loud it is, and she can't find her little sister Eva. Her little sister Eva is missing. Where's Eva? Is she picking flowers? Eva, did you leave me? What happened? So she has to run home. She doesn't tell her mother still. She gets her brothers, sisters, whoever's home, and they run back to the train tracks, find Eva, who had been thrown, fortunately, to the other side of the train track. She was safe, so it has a good ending. And Olga realized how grateful she is for her family. She's just so blessed that she still has her sister, because she thought her the worst, and that she loved having a large family to help her out of situations. So at the end, she kind of says, at that moment, she realized how lucky she was still to be one of 13.
Wow.
And it's a story about an immigrant family, because her parents were from the Austrian Empire. They were Russian. And so I was hoping the story would bring out some questions about immigrant families, how it was in the 1940s. There's a list of questions that encourage conversation between adults and child and parents and grandparents, and talking about heritage and even a family tree, very simple, age-appropriate family tree. So there's a lot going on in here, but that's it in a nutshell.
Well, let me ask you something. You said this was a COVID project.
I say COVID because it was during March.
What brought you to this story? In other words, I know you were taking some writing classes, but did you have several things in mind, or were you focusing on this one story in these writing classes? How did you get there?
Okay, so I've been writing stories probably for over 20 years, kid stories. Never published anything. This is my first book. I did take a writing course, which is where I met you, and I kind of got the motivation to go deeper, because you can't just write a story and publish it. It usually doesn't work that way, right? That's very rare phenomenon. So I got some feedback, and Colleen, who was our leader, writing leader coach there, she gave me some good ideas. I changed the story out, making it a little more fictional and narrative than what I had it. I had it more as a memoir. She suggested that if you want to go outside your family, because, you know, memoirs, a lot of times your immediate family will read it, is make it into a story narrative with a lesson to learn, a little climax, and you know, a good ending. So that's kind of how I got to the story where I am. And then I remember meeting someone at another writing retreat about 5 years ago who owns a publishing company in Saratoga Springs, and I liked her. I said, I'm going to call you someday. So I found her card, and for me, she was like a cheerleader. She just coached me along, and that's what I needed. I can go into a lot of self-doubt sometimes. You feel good one day, and you're going gung-ho, and then you get a little self-doubt and question what you've written, or question what you're doing, or procrastinate. And she was, besides knowing the publishing industry and having some connections, she was a great cheerleader for me, and I needed that. So during COVID, we did everything FaceTime. Yeah. And we can focus on it.
My publisher, now that I think back on it, Lucy Swinson at Turning Mill, was actually a cheerleader. Yeah. She was the one that said, you need to write this book. You've got these things. Now let's get this done. And then she was just after me. She just, you know, this is a project that needs to be finished. Let's do this. Let's do this. And sometimes I think about my journey with the publisher. I wonder if she's ever asked herself, well, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I should. Maybe I should not. Because whether it's 5 pages or 500 pages, those words go on the page one at a time, you know? So when you finally got down to one story, what made you choose this story?
Well, this will hopefully turn into a series. So the series would be 1 of 13. So this is one adventure, my 1 of 13 series. And I just knew I wanted to call it 1 of 13. This is the first adventure. It has been proposed to me that that I might want to make this a chapter book, an easy reader chapter book, where each chapter could be an adventure. And I said, I don't know if I want to do that. I want to do a picture book. You know, sometimes, but then I started thinking about it, and I do have these stories that I've submitted to traditional publishers, and I haven't heard back yet. But I'm thinking, maybe that's a good idea. I work in a school, and I've looked up some easy reader chapter books, and it kind of makes sense to me now to do something like that, contain it in one book instead of having separate books. But it's still in the idea stage, and hoping something will project itself that will promote me to do that.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think that's so lovely about the journey of a book is that you start off with this, and then you can do the chapter book. You can still do other things, because I know that I started off with my story of the food pantry, and it was a memoir, and then I did I did a small book on homelessness, and I did another small book on some miracles that happened in the food pantry. And so it's like you can do these different things. It's a creative process. You can
evolves,
work with it.
right?
Yes.
Different stories come out. I mean, when I started this, I had some ideas in my head, but I hadn't actually written any other stories. But since I was working on this, I have written about 5 other stories that need a lot of work and just need some critique or whatever. And that's where I'm at right now. I like stories about families, so that's been my mission, sort of, to keep it with the family ties. And I have some other stories too. One other story that's non-family, but so anyway, it was a wonderful process, and I enjoyed talking about it. After I published it, so many people came up to me and said, "Oh, I've always wanted to do a children's book. What did you do? Who did you contact?" And it kind of made me feel good that a lot of people think it and don't go through it. So I feel like I accomplished that. So that was a good feeling.
How did you find your illustrator?
So I found my illustrator. I knew him from an exhibit at our local library. Found out that he goes to my church, which I didn't realize at the time. I don't know why I didn't know that. I also checked a couple other illustrators. I gave him the story, and I said, give me a few samples. One was a lady. Initially, it was a lady and Bob Bodie, who illustrated this book. And they both gave me great little vignettes or drawings, illustrations. I went with Bob Bodie because he was a little more realistic looking, his drawings, and I wanted to be more realistic. Diane Bowman was the other author. I loved hers too, but hers was a little bit more, which is neither good or bad, but it seemed more cartoonish to me, which maybe it would have been more appealing to children. I don't know. She has authored her own books, and she does a lot with mice and animals, so it had that little feel for it. And I'm going to have her be an illustrator in the future, I think, because she does good work too. But I just felt for this story I wanted it to be more realistic looking, and I approached Bob and we discussed it, and he had never illustrated a book, but he had done exhibits, and I try to tell him, illustrations are a big part of the story, and the illustrations have to tell the story just as much as the words do. It was a little challenge for him, and I have to say, in the beginning, we had some ups and downs. We never argued or anything, but we did have some. He didn't know if he was right for the part. We had to discuss it, and it kind of evolved a little bit. Vicki, my publisher, she helped me there also, because having the confidence to know what she went through, what you go through for publishing and working with graphic designers and editors, she kind of gave me the confidence and gave him the confidence that, well, we're going to use this size and this is where we go. And she could answer a lot of technical questions that I couldn't. So I was fortunate, because he's also from East Greenwich, and now he's also authored and illustrated a second book, which is due out any day now. So I feel like he launched a little bit and was challenged a little bit with this book, but learned from it and is going forward too with his own work. So it wasn't like a traditional publisher where, in a traditional publisher, like say a Simon & Schuster, you of course send the text and then they find the publisher, or they find the illustrator, and a lot of times you never even meet the illustrator, and they have their own ideas of how they illustrate it. With Bob, it was more of a collaboration. He said, well, I would show him pictures of my family, and then he would do something. And he would, like this cover page is a kind of a composite of a lot of different pictures, but these are all pictures of the 13 kids. So yeah, it was a labor of love, both of us. It had some challenges, and we made changes along the way. Some things I would think I was surprised, but that's where Vicki helped too. She said, well, I think this would sound better. And sometimes you need that sounding board, because you kind of get into your own way. And to tell you the truth, I don't care if it says that or that. She helped clarify some things like that for me.
One thing I really like about this book, children's book, is the size of this children's book. And I also like the fact that it has a soft cover.
Oh, do you like the soft cover?
Yes, because I read to my children every day for years. I mean, books were very, very important in my children's lives. And holding up, the books then were bigger and they had hard covers. And this is easier. This is easier.
Yeah.
It's easier to hold. It's easier for a child to carry with him or her.
That's true.
It's it can become a companion to a child. I just feel like it's a really nice book that way. And how long has this book been out now?
We launched it in October 2020.
So what are some things that you're doing?
Doing outside of this, you mean?
To
promote it?
Promote this book.
I launched it by having a book signing in Saratoga Springs, which is where the publisher is located. And that's a great experience. It's the first time. I've done a couple of book signings. When COVID let up a little bit, we were allowed to have book signings outside with a mask, but it was at the storefront outside on the street, on the sidewalk. And I was fortunate to get a beautiful fall day, so that worked out. I work in a school. I work in an elementary school, and I was approached by the 4th grade to talk about my book as a book showing an immigrant family and talking how it connected to immigration. Because there's this part in here where they are very proud of the American flag that they're displaying, even though they were from Russia. We talked about manifests and coming over and whatever. And that prompted a lot of discussions on where people's families came from, which really led a lot to what's your heritage? I mean, these are 4th graders. Do you know where your grandparents are from? And I'd say half the class knew and the other half didn't. Now, maybe they were American Indian, I don't know. I mean, they might have different backgrounds or whatever, but it was just one aspect. So that was a great conversation. Discussion. I have a library program scheduled this summer where we're going to do an outside reading of the book as well as an activity, something that ties in with questions that we can discuss some of these questions in the back and play a little game with them. I have a library event scheduled for local book authors that's happening July 28th at the East Greenbush Library Farmers Market. And that's just a matter of pooling together some local children's book authors and showing what their town has to offer as far as children's book authors. What else? I have a website. I did an interview on a podcast with Quinn Cummings is her name. She started a new podcast, and her goal was to encourage conversations through books. And I said, well, this is great. We get so much from books. Kids get so much from books. Beside the picture part, the visual part, words they've never heard of. There's so much going on. So she's a firm believer. She has a 7-year-old. She calls her site Aiden's Books. And that was early on. We did a podcast. So that was fun. I did a read aloud with that. I've promoted schools, libraries. I've been to flea markets. When you self-publish, I went through like a hybrid publisher, I find that you really have to do a lot to promote your book. You can have the best book in the world, but if it sits in a box in your room, no one's going to enjoy it. So I have social media accounts. I will admit I'm a little phobic with social media, only because I don't understand it totally, but that is a good avenue to promote books.
Do you not use social media?
No, I use it, but I don't use it like some authors do, like daily they'll post something. And it's not always about the book either. They just post their philosophies or ideas or whatever. So I have a lot more I want to do. I visited my son in Detroit, and I contacted bookstores there. Going to bookstores and consigning to bookstores or downright purchasing. So I try to always keep my books with me because conversations come up. Like I said, oh, I love picture books. I always want to write a picture book. Let me see yours. And, people are encouraged by it, inspired by it. And I'm thrilled about that. One thing I have on my slate, like I said, I work for a school, so we finish next week. This summer, I want to go to nursing homes and read a story like this. I think it would promote a lot of remembrance for some of the nursing home patients. Olga lived in a nursing home for 3 years. My mother was in a nursing home, and they used to have programs all the time where people came in and they could talk to. They love, programs. You're always looking for programs. So that's another avenue I want to try. And just again, it's not about selling the book. It's just about sharing stories and storytelling and making people feel good about what they're doing.
I have a theory that it really isn't about selling the books. Although I do have to say that we had an author's day in the Mowers Meadow Flea Market last summer. We're going to be having another one in the fall.
Okay.
John Maurer has already started talking about that. So we're going to be having another one in the fall, but we had one, and we did have a couple of writers who specifically sold their books. And we had one lovely writer, a delightful woman that I absolutely adored. And, if you came within 6 feet of her, you went off with that book. And that is a talent that I do not possess.
Yeah.
I have learned that just by having activity, you are going to sell your books. It is a truly magnetic and mysterious and magical experience, and I agree. I can really say that, so that when you go to the nursing home, your chances of separating yourself from a book are not great, but the fact that you are reading it it's going out there, and it's working. I can say this because I have been doing this show for years, and in the last few months, I have begun to make arrangements to get some of the older shows on YouTube, and the sales have gone up. And those YouTube shows have nothing to do with this book or any other books, but something is happening.
I think you just get out there and you plant a seed somewhere.
Yes.
And that seed may touch 2 people deep or down, or something just hit. Now, so I was fortunate to have a newspaper article about local authors, about local books in the Times-Union just before Christmas, and he picked my book. I was lucky to do that. The book actually takes place in Maplewood, New York, which is a suburb it's a little hamlet of Waterville. It's a Russian community. The next day after that, or actually before the Times-Union came out, a soldier from overseas, she was in Kuwait, had read it because she can read it online before they actually get it in the mailbox the next day. She said, "Oh my goodness, my father lived in Maplewood," and she had a long email. His name was this. I wonder if you know him, because this is the real street of Maplewood where Olga grew up, and I even put the church. I wanted to make sure I put the church steeple because that was important to them. In the background with the Russian Orthodox cross, which has nothing to do with the story, but it's just part of the environment. And I was like, who would have thought that someone in Kuwait saw my book?
Right.
In upstate New York.
Right.
And then I emailed her back, and we did have some connections, and I'm still in touch with her. It's just, you just don't know. I mean, you just don't know.
There is a famous writer who says that writing a book and publishing a book is like putting a note in a bottle and throwing it out to sea. And it's going to go where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And I am finding through these experiences, because now I don't do media very well either. And as a matter of fact, I every time I make a post, in Facebook, it's like, this is the dumbest
It's so
post.
stressful. Yeah, I feel like it's so stressful. I need a college kid or a high school kid to help me, and I'm going to do that this summer too. Just help me along the way and feel it's okay to say something, or you can take it down. Or
my experience with high school and college kids has been disastrous. But I do have a woman. On the West Coast, in Renton, Washington, who does this, and she's interested in it, and she does it well, because if it weren't for her, it would never happen. And she does these things. She writes these things. But I want to finish this one thought, and then we can go to the other, because I think it's important. The thought that I have is that having the connection of the stories, the newspaper story, and of going to the stores and doing the things that you're doing, I think that is far more positive and effective than just going to Amazon.
Well, Amazon is unfortunately, I don't think you sell books if you're not on Amazon. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think that's reality, because people may see your book, and they might just remember my last name or whatever the title, and they don't see you again. At least they can go to Amazon and find it. That is reality. But there are ways to work with Amazon that I'm not quite familiar with either, to promote the algorithms and all that type of thing. But it's a learning. I mean, it can be overwhelming. You could spend 24 hours a day.
I know that when I first published the first edition of this, I was working at Mowers Meadow, and I never knew the guy's name. He had a booth that was just there that day, and then he didn't come back again. And he just said to me, he said, there are 50 different companies that market books in addition to Amazon.
Yeah.
And he said, if you can get your book in each one of these companies, you will sell huge amounts of books just simply by selling one book per company per month.
That's true. But
I have not had the time to pursue that in any great length. So there's a lot of opportunities to market our books that we just don't have the time to follow up on. But I do have 2 websites. Now, I love your website. I think your website is so great.
It's a work in progress, as you know, right? To keep it up to date, and it's a work in progress. And if you don't have a publicity person up here, you do it on your own. Look, my son did help me a little bit, but I like your website too. I think your website is current. You had current blogs, and I got interested in your book by seeing it on there. And I said, I know some people besides myself that would like reading a book like that. So it's making a connection and diving deeper into what you have to offer, and finding the right audience. I think that's a big part, finding the right audience.
My publisher did the blogs, and she actually did the blogs, I think, before she did the book.
So she was creating like momentum and interest.
Right. The blog was part of the exercise to get me to publish a book.
Kind of make you accountable.
Yes.
Now that she's talked about it.
I read a book called How to Blog a Book by Nina Amir, A-M-I-R.
Oh.
And I took that book and I took it to heart.
Yeah.
And I actually came up with the website, and then of course Lucy designed it, and she did all of the technical work that was done. But and then now at Facebook, I have 2 Facebook pages, and I'm sitting. Do I really need this?
Yeah.
I've
been hearing Facebook is kind of waning.
Yeah.
Our generation maybe is still Facebook, and I actually do feel like this book does appeal to grandparents, maybe more than a younger 30-something, because they're not on Facebook. It's just changing. The trends are changing. They're more on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and so that's an area where I could improve. But it's just not my style.
Yeah.
At this point, anyway, until I get more comfortable, I'd rather meet people, do children literacy programs, library programs, and meet people that way. And I just feel face-to-face is still my way of doing it. So I have to learn, branch out, and get more comfortable with that.
Until the pandemic came, I was involved in a book reading program where we met once a month at a bookstore, and the poets read their poetry and the writers read their chapters and different things like that.
Was it a critique group or just
No, it was
sharing?
just reading, just sharing.
Okay.
And one of the women, there was a guest showed up one evening, and she shared with all of us that she spends every evening going to a reading.
Oh, every evening. Wow.
And she said it was
have
really
children.
great because that way you introduce your book to 25 new people
Right.
every evening. And when you do that, you sell copies and you spread the word. And so there's all different ways.
Yeah. I've been in touch with genealogy sites, I guess they are, because we do talk a lot about heritage when I read it. And I told you the story talks about a flattened penny. Well, doing a little research on the flattened penny, there are sites that sell pennies like that as souvenirs. You can buy a machine that presses it. There's people that collect pennies from different, like Statue of Liberty, you can buy a flattened penny from their souvenir museum shop, which that amazed me. So I need to do some more work there. I found some family sites that are just promote family activities. Like I said, there is a lot of areas out there you can promote and learn from them and share and collaborate.
What about your family tree? How is this going into you? How is this folding into your spreading the word, your marketing, your whatever? How is this happening?
Well, it's a children's activity. It's age appropriate. It's very basic. So I try to tell people when they purchase this, they have the questions, which prompts questions to their grandmother or parents, like to ask. What's an example of a question? Did you ever wish you had more brothers or sisters like Olga? Okay, that's. Did you ever go near the train tracks when you were younger, or other dangerous places? So it gets them talking about their childhood, where a 7-year-old doesn't think about their grandparent being a 7-year-old, being a child. So I think it opens up a conversation that the grandparent loves talking about their childhood, because when the 7-year-old is now 27, he wants to hear that the grandparent may not be around anymore, or can't relate. So I just hope that is what encourages. So then you get back to having a little written record in the book. Here's what my mother's name was, mother's father's country of origin, my great grandmother, and it just gives children a sense of belonging, I think. Even if a child is adopted or comes from another family, I mean, I don't want to leave anybody out. It gives them a sense of belonging if they know where their mother, father, maybe they don't have a father, where their mother came, so they know the story of their father. I mean, I just think I like them having the discussion earlier rather than when they're older, because I've talked to older people, and it's funny how sometimes they've never heard stories from the parents, whether the parents had a terrible upbringing or something and blocked something out and didn't want to talk about it. This gives a little opportunity to highlight the positive or the good, the funny stories, or it's kind of like a family reunion. You remember your aunt, cousin Vinny? Remember when he did this? He was the crazy one. I just love when just from my own experience with lots of cousins. And talking to other people with large families, how that sense of belonging is sometimes children don't have that anymore. I mean, families are smaller, so they may feel left out sometimes or don't live near their family. And I just think this is a visual that, yeah, you belong somewhere. This is your heritage. This is where you came from, and then it can branch off of that. to learn more stories.
I'm going to ask you now, this to me, this is so important. But now I'm going to ask you about your questions.
Okay.
Does anybody ever ask you, I mean, do you bring this up when you talk about your book?
I always try to say there's stories at the end. And
most there are questions at the end.
Questions at the end, right? And people have said to me, what a good idea. I love, they've written reviews saying they love the stories. It helped them get more into their genealogy a little bit. Yeah, I get a lot of great feedback having questions at the end, kind of a discussion point of view.
Because when I wrote the food pantry book, I don't hang out in churches anymore. Mm-hmm. I did one of these.
Like a book discussion type thing.
There was so much work went into that. And this was after I had finished the book and I had gone,
well, that's a little more involved.
Now it's over. And there's a lot of work has gone into your book.
Yeah, I mean, even though there's, I don't know how many words, 500 words, I don't remember. Seeing your book and the beautiful, how much you've written would be intimidating. I don't think I could write that many. That would take me forever, I think. That's what in my mind, because I've never, but it is amazing how much it does take to even do a children's book that's 500, 700 words.
Okay, that was my question now. How many words are in this book?
I think it was 500 something.
How many pages?
It should be 29. Most children's books are 29. That's for a printing. It's kind of a printing guideline for printers.
Because children's books now,
not including the cover,
with a book like this, you put it together and it's published, whatever. This is a different thing because the illustrator has to illustrate double pages.
Yep.
He has a certain number of single pages that he illustrates. Mm-hmm. He has, you really, there's a lot to this, this project that does not meet the eye.
Yes, and that's some of the challenges and some of the things we learn, author as well as the illustrator, is some of the pages he did as, like this page, this is one of the first ones he did, was a large spread of the street. And I wanted 55 because that was the house they lived in, number 55. And it happened to come with the binding was, and I really wanted 55 because that's their house number. So on the second printing, we were able to do a little shifting. That wasn't the illustrator's job. It was like the printer or graphic designer could do something like that. But my illustrator put in, he decided to put in an authentic 1942 car or Chrysler, whatever it is. But you're right. We spent a lot on storyboarding in the beginning, just doing shot by shot. And when I write my children's stories, I try to make a little paper book about it and just see how it flows, how it connects from one page to the other. Because you always want like a page turner, right? What's going to happen next so they turn the page. And sometimes it's hard, sometimes easy because you don't want to make up things, but you have to keep within the story. And I've heard people say sometimes it's harder to write a short story than it is to write a long story, like a longer nonfiction or whatever. And it is. Sometimes it is. I can tell you a lot of things we changed. I don't want to go into all the details, but we made several changes. And I think this picture, he drew it 5 different ways.
Yeah.
And he was nice enough. He didn't charge me for each page because he felt like he was trying to get what's the best feel for it.
Well, that was his job. And plus it was a first real experience as well.
Right. He was feeling himself
but
out. But
even so, 15 books into the future, he still may have to do this 5 times.
Yeah.
Because you have
to get it where he feels comfortable with. And I have talked to illustrators that they just don't like sometimes a page, how it goes, and they agonize over it. And I think it looks great, but they just don't like it until they feel comfortable,
I think that's one of the reasons about it. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that the publishers, when you go to a major publisher, they choose the illustrator.
Right.
Because it's someone they can work with. and they can show this story and talk to this illustrator and say, okay, here is this story, now tell us. And so it's easy.
It takes the emotion out of it, because I'm too close. I wanted to look like I wanted this picture to really look like her brother, Wasi, in the Army. And they may have different ideas about it. Might have different colors.
I think what the process is, that if you are a publisher and you are trying to have a publishing business in which you select the people and you select the book, then it becomes your project and you have priorities and you know what works for you. Whereas you and your publisher has priorities, but your publisher also has to take in consideration what you want. And that's a different focus completely. And I know that there's a woman in our area, and we're going to do our writing book again. She wrote a children's book, in which they had a story, and she wrote the story, and the child wrote the story, the grandchild wrote the story, and she would paint this side, and then the grandchild would paint this side.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
That's interesting, yeah. People are so creative. I mean, you think all the ideas have been said, but then you see a book come out in different formats, like, wow, what a great idea someone had.
What have you learned in this first book that you can say to yourself, okay, I'm going to do this again, but I'm going to do this differently?
Well, I think it's important to show a lot of people your work before you send it to the publisher. Now, this had gone over a year, so I did show it to people over the years, but it changed so much. I'm now working on more than one story, so I'm kind of spreading out myself. I have to not procrastinate. I have to be focused, and that's all I do. I mean, you hear the writer's life is not very pleasant sometimes, but I feel like there's a reason for that, because it's so easy to get distracted. I would like to, I may self-publish another book, go through Vicki again, which is fine because I loved her. I don't know if I would use the same illustrator, and we've talked because he's doing his own thing now, and it's a lot of work. I'd like to try different illustrators. Now, if I'm going to work in the series, I have to kind of keep the same look and whatever. It's kind of a vintage look to it, so I would have to keep that. Well, I learned how hard it is, how long it takes. It was I probably started having discussions with the illustrator in January, and my goal was to have it ready to print or to sell by or market by July. And it turned, I think it was June, and then I said, okay, I'll go with July, and then it'll be October. Now, part of that was COVID, and the printing industry didn't have the help and that type of thing. But I think I learned just how long it takes. It's a lot of give and take. Things happen, I had a whole carton of books, and the binding was off, so we had to wait another 2 weeks to reprint. It's a process, and not to beat yourself up over it, and that it's got to be a labor of love, I guess. Some people will just gravitate to it, other people may not, and that's okay.
Yes. We write a book word for word, and a person looks at the finished document for a minute and a half and makes a decision. Mm-hmm. And, it may take years. A question that I have, do you think if you were to blog your children's books, would that help you?
I've wanted to do that. I just don't think I could. I was wanted to do a blog a month, and I haven't. I feel like the time isn't there, and I kind of drag myself. I write it, and then I have to think about it, I admire people who can just write a blog.
Well, the idea of a blog post is that's what it is.
Right off the cuff.
It's like the first or second or third revision. I revise. In this book, I have revised every chapter in this book at least 35 times. But I didn't do that when I blogged it. Yeah. I got it out there. I got it on paper. I saw it together, and then if I saw that I needed a change, you can just add, change it. And so that, for me, that really helped a lot.
Did it? Okay.
That
so
really
did you
helped.
get on an actual blogging site, or did you just put it on your website?
Oh,
Because there
no.
are blogging sites, right? That
I
have direct.
have, at one point I had 4 WordPress blogs.
Okay, so
And I got rid of 2 of them because it
Interesting.
was too much. I'm down to 2. One is Reflexology for the Spirit, which is the wellness. And the other one is Hunger is Not a Disease, which is the food pantry one. And so I work on both of them. And right now I'm working on the Hunger is Not a Disease blog post. Blog site, because the whole time I was writing that book, the memoir, the teacher kept saying, this is an extremely spiritual story. You are not writing it as a spiritual story. You need to go at it from a spiritual. So I've completely shifted, and so I have put it on the blog.
Okay.
So
to get
each
feedback, like from
yes, so that
Okay.
each article, each post is an article, and right in the first time I wrote it, I actually wrote that book. I don't hang out in churches anymore in 5 months.
Wow.
Because
That's good.
I
Progress.
knew exactly what had happened, and I put it together. So, and I wrote. But this one now, I actually wrote it, and once, and then I started now this week putting different chapters on the computer on the blog post. For today, and I haven't posted yet. I wrote an article about forgiveness, and so that's not in the storyline, but it is a standalone piece.
Are you doing weekly blogs, or of course if you have a couple?
When I first started blogging, because I knew exactly what I was blogging about as well, with both reflexology and I don't hang out in churches anymore. I posted 3 times a day.
Wow.
I would take an article because I knew what I was writing. So I would take an article and I would divide it up into 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, so I would have these short bursts.
Okay.
And because they tell you that there are millions of blogs out there, and you can blog for 2 years and nobody will ever find you. Well, the reason they don't find you is because you don't post enough.
Yeah.
So you have to get out there. And I had readers
Interesting.
from all around the world.
Well, we'll have to talk more, because initially, again, during COVID, I was home from school, still doing schooling, but I had much more time. I was going to do a blog a month and blog about large families, because I had a list of people who came from large families and they were willing to talk to me, and I just don't have the time to do that. So it's not like writing a story, so I could kind of report about them on my blog, and that's what I feel like I need to do that this summer. That will be a good part of the thing. I want to be more successful in my website. So we're going to talk more about the avenues that you use for blogging, because it makes sense. If you blog, you get it out there. And I see a lot of other authors' blogs, and I'm on their email lists, and sometimes I can read them, sometimes I don't, but that's where I want to get to, and just, find the people that are interested.
I think it moves you along.
Yeah.
Because
Keeps
you
you
see it
current.
in print, You see it in print. You see how it sets up. You see how the pages look. You don't necessarily see the type, and now I did WordPress. Lucy at the Turning Mill did my WordPress, and it went together so easily.
Okay.
But I did mine years ago. It's so much easier now.
Okay.
So much easier.
I'm gonna have to really look into that then.
Yeah, because you obviously are going to write a lot. I mean, you're going to write.
I feel like I have a lot to write about.
Yeah.
I feel like this can go off into different tangents for a picture book. Even it's more of a serious matter versus like a fun.
This story, you talk about one of 13.
Book.
I mean, first of all, that's the cultural changes.
Mm-hmm.
But second of all, you have the immigrant issue, which is enormous right now. And it doesn't make any difference what country these people came from. Mm-hmm. Your family came from another country. And we all came from another country. So that's an issue that we all, this is as modern as tomorrow.
Yeah, I hope it relates. It's funny, Memorial Day weekend, I was up in Inlet, New York, which is up in the Adirondacks, and it was Memorial Day weekend, it was raining, and my husband and I stopped into a great little bookstore called the Adirondack Reader. And I met the owner, happened to be there, which a lot of times you go there and you don't even talk to the right person who can say they want your book. And she loved the picture of the soldier. It was Memorial Day weekend. Her husband and some of the other townspeople were dressed up in their uniforms for Memorial Day weekend. And she just loved seeing a soldier like from the 1940s.
Right.
You don't know what people are going to relate to. So we booked a book signing in her store, and then she invited me to a kids' day in the fall. Again, one contact.
Now, when you went in and visited her, did you leave a book?
She actually bought books. I go in and ask initially if you want to consign a book or be willing to purchase a book for sale, and I make sure they have children's book and it's the right kind of genre that she'd be interested in. And she was just open arms. I don't know if I hit her on the right day. Sometimes it was raining out. There was a lot of people in the store. She was the nicest lady, and the store was supposed to close last year when we were there. They had a for sale sign, so I said, I'm so glad you're still open, that you're not selling anymore. I kind of knew a little bit about their history. So she actually bought 5 books on the spot to sell at her store, because I'm not up there, I go up there like 2 or 3 times a year. So, and then as she was there, the town librarian happened to come in because her husband was dressed up as part of the parade activities or whatever, Memorial Day activities, in his Vietnam uniform. And she bought a copy for her library. So, timing.
Yes.
Just, you never know what's going to stick, what's going to draw people's interest. So, I encourage you to doctor's office, patients. I think there's a lot of avenues to explore for all different types of books.
Absolutely. Everywhere you go, there is an opportunity for everyone.
Right.
I know that. I think you saw him because you came and visited me at Mauer Meadow. Mm-hmm. Mauer's Meadow, the young man that had the booth way down at the end.
Yeah.
He had the. Oh God!
What was the title of his book? He wanted
Selling the 90s.
You're right, Selling the 90s.
Selling the 90s.
Beanie Babies and all those interesting things.
He's reliving life with Selling the 90s.
Yeah.
So, our books are creative, but they are creative only as we make them, which is really, really interesting.
Right.
So, do you have a book that you are preparing to publish now?
Well, I took a little break I do have like 5 stories. I have one about, I think it's called, right now the title is Play With Me. It's about Olga, who has all these people in her family and no one will play with her. And another story about, I think I called it Picnic Day or Picnic Night, and it's about true story my mother shared. Her father worked for the railroad, and They never went on vacation. They never had money. They never had a car. They lived in the city, but he worked railroad and got free tickets for all of them to take a trip to a lake nearby, like an hour away, Lake George, a real place. And they packed picnic lunch. They were all excited. Olga didn't know how to swim. They never learned how to swim, but they were excited to go on this hottest day of the year, this Sunday, this summer, and go up there on the train and sit by the lake and play games. And their father, Olga's father, was bringing his fiddle, and they were going to just fest. Well, they get on the train, and their mother missed the train.
Oh my gosh!
True story. And she had the bulk of the picnic lunch.
Oh my gosh!
And she was, shooing them out. You imagine getting all these kids go. You got to get to the train station. They're walking, running. They just make it, and she missed it. So it's not the most delightful day up in the lake, this beautiful lake and everything. But they went on, and they came back, and the mother made a special dinner because she was home. Had like their 2-year-old, the youngest, with her. And she made a special dinner, and it was dusk when the time everyone came, and they all felt so bad for Mama. They ended up having a picnic in their backyard under the moonlight.
Oh, how cute.
And it was the best picnic ever. They called him T.A., had his fiddle, and they were under the stars, and catching fireflies, and it was a nice summer night, and we had all the feast of food. It was the best picnic night ever. That's one story.
So that's the one you're working on now?
That's kind of one I have, but no, the latest one is something not related to this. It's on dragon boating. I don't know if you ever heard of dragon boating.
Yes.
Okay. I'm a dragon boater. But my team is unique in that we're all breast cancer survivors. So I wrote a narrative story about a young girl watching her mother at her first dragon boat race, and how strong she became, and how resilient, and how happy, and how hopeful the young girl felt seeing her mother just thrive from what she remembers going through the disease and finishing up with this race in its jubilant time and everything. So that's what I'm working on now. It's called Paddles Up, Paddle Through.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So you really are really working on the books, and you're going to have several of these books.
I hope so. Hope I can continue. I have another one on cousins, because cousins were really special to me growing up. It's not a story. It's more like some cousins are here, some cousins are here, just comparing different cousins.
How important was it for you to take writing classes?
You know what? I wish I could take more. I think it just gives you the confidence, and you get that critique. And I mean, Colleen is great because she's been there, and she just has a world of knowledge and experience that I don't have. But even the other members, they're your audience. If they like it, then maybe there's something there. If they make a suggestion, then I listen to that, because they're the people that would be reading your story. So
She was
very important.
We are down to 1 minute.
Oh dear.
So very quickly, tell us again your name and how you can be reached, and the name of your book.
Name of the book is One of 13. It is available on Amazon or on my website, which is my name, Catherine Zampier, Catherine with a C, Zampier. I'd be happy to mail you a copy and sign it for you on my website, or you can order it through Amazon. So please check me out. Feel free to send me an email. All my information is on the website. So,
and when you get your other books out, we can find out about it.
Okay.
On your website.
On the
as
website,
well.
probably the best place. Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay. So are you going to be giving a talk anywhere soon?
Other than book signings,
I'm talking about a book signing.
Yeah. Well, the next thing I think I have coming is the library event of local authors that we're promoting. Local authors. I will be there, and that's in East Greenbush, New York, at the Farmers Market. So feel free if you're up in the Albany area. It's on a Wednesday, July 28th. How about you?
Well, I'm planning a writers event at Mowers Meadow this fall.
Okay.
So in which I get writers together. We didn't do it last year. We did it year before, and we're going to do it again.
Great.
And I am at Mowers Meadow every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I can be. That's where I can be found.
And you can buy the book there.
Yes, you can buy the book there.
On
You
your
can
site.
buy it on my website, and you can buy Healer's Handbook also on Amazon.
And this is your third edition, right?
This is my third edition.
Wow,
Yes,
that's wonderful.
This is the last one.
Say goodnight.
Okay,
Good night.
good night. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
listening.
Thank you.